In this tutorial, we'll be looking at the drop-down cell, the OR function, which we will combine with the IF function, and we'll be able to graph values of two different types of units, such as heart rate and a timed unit, using the secondary axis. We will use recorded heart rate at 10-minute intervals and average splits over the course of 60 to 70 minutes. The recorded values were taken from a heart rate monitor and an erg monitor and manually input into the spreadsheet. Here's our spreadsheet where the workouts are listed in column A, and what I've done is looked at my heart rate monitor to see what my heart rate was at the 10-minute mark, 20-minute mark, etc., all the way up to 60 minutes. I also used my heart rate monitor to record my average heart rate for the entire workout and my maximum heart rate at any point in the workout. I also recorded the average splits, and the average splits is the split average from 0 to 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, and 50 to 60. I also have the average for the entire workout listed in column H. Because these types of aerobic workouts aren't very exciting, what I wanted to do was I'd like to track my improvement or hopeful improvement over time, and I wanted to see how it compared with my heart rate. So rather than just looking at splits, I'd like to know how my body is reacting to hopefully increasing my levels of aerobic fitness. Since I was curious about the relationship between the two values, I like to see what happens to my heart rate as my workouts continued. With this data, I will visually compare the information, so I'm going to make myself another tab and call it my report card. So I hit on the plus sign. I'm going to call it my report card because this is going to give me my feedback on how my heart rate and average split compared to each other and compared to individual workouts. On this tab, I'll be dragging specific information out from my workouts using VLOOKUP. So let's set things up. I've got my time in minutes equals. I'm going to drag it from one of the other tabs, and I'm just going to have it equals my first time interval. Hit enter, and there's my 10 minutes. Now I can drag this across, and I get all the way to max heart rate. Well, I don't need these two at this time. All I need are my time intervals. I also wanted to get my heart rate. So with my heart rate, I'm going to have to use VLOOKUP. I didn't need to use VLOOKUP with my time because I'm not comparing it to any specific information. With my heart rate, I like to compare it for a specific day. So we're going to use the cell A2 as our locked cell that we will be using to reference our VLOOKUP. So I'm going to say equals, get the formula bar, VLOOKUP. I'd like to look up the value in A. I need to add the dollar sign because I'm going to lock it on A. My table array for my heart rate, I click on my heart rate tab, select it, and my column index, if I'm just looking for the value under 10 minutes, it's column 1, 2, so I can type in 2, and of course I wanted an exact match, so I will write in false. It gives me an error message because I need to put in the date. I have to think back to when my workout was. Let's say my first one was February 2nd. Again, it still says NA. I look back, oops, my first workout is February 5th. So I have to put in February 5th. Unlike before when we had student numbers, and you just had to remember your student number, now we'll be looking at random days when we did our workouts. Since we can't memorize all these dates, let's create a drop-down menu. We want to see all of our options from the list we created. To create a drop-down cell, we will be creating a list in a column of the desired drop-down options. To do so, we're going to select the cell to be used as a drop-down button. Then, under the Data tab, we will select Tools, then Validate and Data Validation. We will choose List under the heading Allow, and we will click on the graph icon Source, then we will click on the graph icon under Source and highlight the cells for the drop-down menu. Once we're done, we can click OK. We just want to make sure that the Ignore Blanks and In-Cell drop-down should both be checked as well. Let's create our drop-down cell. I'm going to click on the Date cell. Under the Data tab, I will click Validate, Data Validation. Under Allow, I'm going to select List. My source, I will go to the icon. And my dates I'm going to look at are in column A. Once I'm done, I can end this, and we've checked off Ignore Blank and In-Cell dropdown. They are the default. Since we have this Ignore Blank checked off, I can actually extend my list further. Instead of to A7, I can go as far down as I like. So we'll just go another 3 more for our next 3 workouts. I click OK, and now if I go back to cell A2, I have my list of options: February 5th, 7th, 8th, 10th, and 12th, and those extra 3 days that we had that were blank do not appear in our list. Going back to my heart rate, my cell A2 is locked. I also need to lock my table array with $signs. Hit enter, and now I can drag this across. When I dragged it across, of course, my column index stayed on 2. So if we go back and we change our column index to our dynamic columns, here it's in column C. Under heart rate, it's in column B. And if we're looking at column C, we want to go back 1. So my value after column for my column index is going to be column bracket bracket -1. Hit enter, and I should have 146. I hit enter, I have 146. And in my next columns, these should all change. 46, 48, 49. 46, 48, 49. 49, 49, 50. 49, 49, 50. So our heart rate information is there. We can now add the information for our splits. We can look it up using VLOOKUP as well. My lookup value is going to be again A2. We're going to lock it down. My table array is now in my average split. Again, we're going to lock it down. My column index, as we did before, we're going to use our dynamic columns. And we saw we were in column C, but we need to go back 1 to column B. So we have -1. And our range lookup, we want exact values. So we're going to say false. Our number is in the wrong format. Custom, custom. And now we can pull this across. And we have our splits 213 to 228. 213 to 228. Lastly, I'm also going to drag in the information for my average heart rate, max heart rate, and average split. So here, under the J column, I'll title this average heart rate, max heart rate, and average split equals, again, VLOOKUP the date. I don't need to lock it down because I don't plan on dragging it anywhere. VLOOKUP the date, the table array for average heart rate under the heart rate tab. My column index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And my range lookup is false. I should have 146. I hit enter, there's my 146. I do the same for max heart rate and average split. There we have it, 146, 54, 220, 46, 54, and 220. Before we move any further, let's imagine that we want to eventually extend our workout to 70, 80, or 90 minutes. So instead of ending at 60, we might extend this for my next workout to 70 minutes, or 80, or 90 minutes. In order to accommodate this, as we saw in a previous video, we're going to have to draw in the information from somewhere else, then have it look for missing information to ignore, such as the heart rate or split for an extra 10 minutes that we didn't do initially. Basically, it is a precaution so that our graph ignores these plots and thus maintains a nice scale for the values we want to appear. So I'm going to insert a column for 70 on all three tabs. And to make things easy, I'm just going to copy and paste my information. We'll change this to February 15th. And I'm just going to put in the average here and do the same with the heart rate. Control copy, control paste. February 15th was our new date. And my average heart rate was 142. So we'll say it was there for the last 10 minutes. And everything works out quite well. Go back to my report card. And we can see here, February 15th has appeared. This information doesn't work because our columns only go to J7. So we need to change our table array. I'm going to delete this portion and insert for my new table array and include this column. Same thing for my splits. I'm going to extend it over to 70 minutes. Hit enter. I just have to make sure that I've locked my table array with dollar signs. Now I can drag these across, and there we have it. These have been negatively affected as well. For my average heart rate, if we're looking to put the value into column L, let's just look and have our dynamic column index. So from column L, if we want our average heart rate, if we start in L is where we have our information. To get the average heart rate, we have to subtract 1, 2, 3. So on my report card, instead of having 8, I'm going to put in column minus 3. Enter, I get 142. There's my 142 right here for my average heart rate. Column 9, we knew it was 1 over from the average heart rate, so I'm going to use my dynamic columns, and instead of having minus 3, I'm now going to have minus 2. This still says NA. Let's go back and double check. It's still looking up A2. My table array is from A2 to J7. Let's just double check with heart rate. A2 to J7. J7 is right here. We need to go further down. So we're going to just put in, instead of J7, we can even extend this to J20. So on my report card, this will be J20. And it's 154. With this one, likewise, instead of just going down to 7, we're going to have, it's going to go down to 20. We also need to double check our column index number. It says column 8. If we go back to our average split, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're not looking for column 8, we're now looking for column 9 or column I. Compared to L, column I is minus 1, 2, 3. So we're going to just simply put in column, bracket, bracket, minus 3, enter, and there's our 214.9 referring to the average split. So that way if I change this, the average split is now 215. On my report card, my average split is 215. Thus, when we add in another column, we will need to update the table array on our source tabs, then drag it across the columns. For our graphs, I'm going to set up multiple rows because I like to have all the information in one place. I'm going to have my time in minutes, my heart rate, my average heart rate, my max heart rate, my split, and my average split. These rows right here are going to be used for my graph, so I like to just color it into another color, and we'll just label this graph information. We'll merge this, wrap text, and we'll center it. There we go. As we saw before, I need to set up this graph information, and I like to have it all in one place, but I need to set it up so that any zeros that appear, as mentioned previously, they are ignored in our graph. To do so, I'm going to use the if statement combined with the OR function. The OR function is used to test multiple conditions. Basically, the result is true if any of the arguments are true, otherwise the result is false. So our formula is equals OR logical 1, logical 2, etc., where logical 1 is the first condition to test, logical 2 the second condition to test, etc. You can add as many conditions as you like, up to 255 following this format. We can also use the OR function as part of other functions like the if function. Equals if, and then in brackets, or our logical test number 1, logical test number 2. If those come back as true, whatever we write between the quotation marks here is going to be given as our response. And if all of these are false, our false response is our second option from the if function. So for example, if or A1 is greater than 49.5 or B1 is greater than 49.5, if those are true, so if they are greater than 49.5, one of those values, it's going to say pass. If they are both false, it's going to say fail. Now, let's put in our information for our graphing. For our time equals, right here, C1. That's not going to change. We can drag that across all the way to 70 minutes. For my heart rate equals if bracket or bracket C2 equals quotation marks no data. So if there's no data at all, or C2 equals 0, we're going to return our hidden response. If it's false, then we'll simply return C2. So if we look at our formula, if C2, here's C2, if it did not have any information, or if it equaled 0, it will say NA. Otherwise, it's going to say the value for C2. If we drag this across, we get information exactly the same as we saw here because we have a value. If we change this to a previous where we did not have information in 70, here we have our 0, so it met the condition right here, I2 equals 0, and it returned NA. We want this NA because it hides that cell when we are graphing it. Otherwise, it would graph a 0 on our graph and it would throw our scale off. For my average heart rate, a similar formula equals if bracket or bracket. Because I'm going to want to drag it across, I'm going to lock it on cell L1. This way it stays on L1 equals no data or $L $1 equals 0. Close the bracket. Our NA symbol, otherwise $L $1, close the bracket, enter. So we get our 144. I pass this across, and it should be 144 all the way. If there was no information here, we should have NA for all of them. There we go, NA for all of them. For my max heart rate, I'm going to do the exact same. So I can copy this cell, control copy, control paste, but instead of having L1, I want my max heart rate with L2. So I'm going to change all my L1s to L2s. And I'm going to do the same for the average heart rate. Instead of having L1, I'll have L3. And I just need to change the formatting. I can drag that across. I can drag this one across. Everything's good so far. And for my split, it's the same as the heart rate that I did up here. I can copy this. I'll paste it there, but instead of C2, I like it to be C3. Again, I'm going to change the formatting. And then drag it across. Okay, we get our NA because we don't have a value here under 70 minutes. Now that we have our graphing info set up, we can make some graphs that provide feedback. Let's get rid of this. Our first graph, we're going to compare our interval splits and our heart rate during a specific workout. So I'm going to highlight the heart rates. I'm going to go under chart, line, create a line graph. This looks pretty good so far. We have our scale on our left with our heart rate going up just like it does in our data. I'm going to move this to the left and I'm going to go Control, select data. Now we can see what's happening. Our name is going to be heart rate. So now our series changed to the word heart rate. And my x-axis is going to be the time. There's my time. Now my heart rate is being graphed. I'm going to add a series. And in this series, the name is going to be my split. It will be C8 to I8. And my x-axis is C4 to I4. Basically the same thing we were using. This is all fine and dandy, this graph, until we added in our splits. But if we think about it, our heart rate is measured between 140 and 150, while our time is measured between 208 and 219.9. To solve this, we're going to move one scale to the secondary axis on the right side of the table. Adding a secondary axis allows the user to compare two types of data from the same event. This can be used to compare data with different units, such as time and money, or time and numbers, etc., or values that would benefit from two scales at the same unit, so that the scale is appropriate for all data points. So on our graph, what we're going to do is right-click on the blue line. I'm going to format data series. Under axis, I'm going to choose secondary axis. Watching the graph, if I click on secondary axis, all of a sudden I have my scale for my splits and my scale for my heart rate. One is on the left and one is on the secondary axis on the right. I click OK. I can drag this to be a little bit wider, and now we can see what's happening over time. My graph has also only plotted information from 10 minutes to 60 minutes because it's available for either the heart rate or the split at 70 minutes. Let's add a little bit more information to our graph. So under layout, I'll add a chart title. These are my splits and heart rate during chosen workout. I can add axis titles. Now I have options to see the primary and secondary. So my primary axis title horizontally on the bottom is going to say time in minutes. On the left hand side, so my vertical axis, it's going to say split per 500 meters. And on the right hand side, my vertical title will say heart rate. I'm also going to move my legend from the right hand side, and I'm going to move it underneath. Now I can expand this out as much as I like, whatever fits on my page. Now, when I change the workout date from February 7th to the 10th, everything has changed on my graph as well in an instant. And if I go to February 15th, where I have time and heart rate at 70 minutes, my graph has extended to 70 minutes. I'm going to move this graph over to the right hand side because we're going to add some more graphs and then we can put them back into our page later. In my second graph, I'd like to see how close I stayed to my average split. So if these were the splits that I had, and this was my average, I'd like to know how close I was or how consistent I was, because ideally in a steady state workout, I'd like to be as consistent as possible and let my heart rate increase throughout the workout. So for graph number 2, I'm going to compare my daily splits with my average splits. I'm going to highlight split and average split. Under charts, line chart. Now I'm going to right click, select data. I need to add in X values. My X values are my times. Now looking at my series names. If I'm looking for series 1, this is referencing row 8. If I click on it, I'm looking for row 8. There's row 8, split. And for series number 2 is row 9. I'm going to add average split. I hit OK. Now if we were to expand it again, we can see I don't need a secondary axis because nothing's been affected. On my scale on the left hand side, they're both using the same units and roughly the same numbers. So all that's left to do is to add titles under chart layout. These are my chosen day splits and average split. On my axis, my horizontal is again time in minutes, and my vertical axis title is again split for 500 meters. I can move my legend to the bottom, make this a little bit wider, and if I like, I can click on my splits and I can format the data series for that. I can add markers. So now I can see the pinpoint where my graph changes in case I can't see it here. I had a hard time seeing it, so it's nice to see where on this line my marker is at 60 minutes. There we have it. There's graph number 2. Other information I'd like to know. I'd like to see what my heart rate is during the workout compared to my average heart rate, or my max heart rate. Similar to my last graph, I'm going to highlight all 3 heart rate rows. Under charts, line, here we can see this is going to be my heart rate during the workout. Here's my max heart rate, so I can see when I got pretty close to it. And this is my average heart rate for the workout. I'm going to extend this out. Here it says series 1, 2, 3. We want to label this with what each of them are. So I can right click, select data. Series 1 is in row 5. So I go to row 5. It's my heart rate. Hit enter. Heart rate appears under series. For series 2, row 6, row 6, and for series 3, row 7, row 7, and then I have to add on my x-axis the proper labels, which is just simply our time, hit enter, there we go. Again, adding in titles, chart title, this is my heart rate during workout with average heart rate and max heart rate. Underneath, I've got time in minutes, and on the left hand side, I have heart rate. I'm going to move my legend to the bottom. And make this a little bit wider. There we go. Now we can see what's happening to our heart rate. So I'm keeping it under my average until about the 25-minute marker, and then it's gone slightly above, stayed relatively close, peaked a little bit at 60 minutes, and then came back down. It's graph number 3. With my next graph, I'm going to look at the average split and heart rate for all of my workouts. So let's say under charts, I just added a line chart. I'm going to right click on it. First I'll drag it over so we can see it. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to then select data. I'm going to add a series. For my first series, the name is going to be heart rate. And my Y values. I like to see all of my heart rates over the time. So under heart rate, I will choose column 9, my average heart rate. And for my x-axis is going to be the days. See what we have so far. So here is my average heart rate for each of the days. On top of our heart rate, we're going to add another series. Select data. I'm going to add one. My new series, the name of it is going to be average split. I'm going to, for my Y values, go under average split, collect these ones, and my x-axis is again same as before, the heart rate. We hit OK, and our graph is messed up one more time. Again, this is because they're both using the same axis right here. So we're going to change one of them by right-clicking, format data series, change our axis to secondary, hit OK, make this a little bit bigger, and then we'll add in our chart title. And our primary horizontal title, our primary vertical, our secondary vertical, and move our legend to the bottom. Now that we are done our graph, it is important to note that if we were to extend the source of our graph on the X or Y axis past the info that we have, it does not affect our graph. So if I were to right click select data, and extend my Y values further down to I-15, and do the same for my X and Y values. Click OK. Our graph does not change. However, later on, if I were to add in another workout, let's just copy a previous one. I need to change this date because we can't have two of the same for our VLOOKUP. Now when we go to our report card, we have February 17th, and we also have our information show up here. Here we have a bunch of error messages, obviously, because our table array only goes to H8. Again, we can extend all of these. And there we have it. We've extended our graph automatically. These ones keep working. So if we were to keep going, adding more workouts, our graph would update automatically, and we wouldn't have to worry about changing all of our table arrays every single time. For our next chart, we're going to look at the average splits during each 10-minute interval for all workouts at the same time. So I'm going to right click, select data, chart range on my average splits. And I can extend this past the information that I'm going to use for future workouts. I'm going to swap my rows and columns because right now my series is my time intervals when I want my series to be my dates. There are my dates. I click OK, and on my graph we can see here are my splits for each workout corresponding to the color on the right hand side. These empty ones here are the ones that I extended it to. Obviously they show up with potential lines, so we don't want to have too many of them. As always, I can add my titles, average splits during 10-minute intervals for all workouts. My time in minutes. My splits. We already have our markers. And I'm going to leave these here because if I was to put them on the bottom, so now we can see our 10-minute intervals as they happen. Here's my first workout on February 5th, and slowly they've gotten better, which is the trend we're hoping for. I'm going to do the same thing with my heart rate. I'm going to insert a line chart, select data, chart data range, heart rate, and go past it, just a few. I need to switch this. Now my series are my dates. Hit OK. I can add titles, heart rate over time for all workouts. Obviously, once I get to a certain number of workouts, then I'm going to want to make a new graph. So if I were to do this over the whole year, I might break it into month by month. I'm going to add in horizontal title, and my vertical title. And there we have it. Since we have all this information, I hope it's obvious now that the possibilities are endless with however you want to manipulate your data in order to visually see the outcome of your progress. I hope you enjoyed this video and you can use it to your own sport or application. Thanks for watching.